Hi everyone, welcome back to NSHSS 101. I'm your host, Adaliz Ramirez, and today we're diving into one of my favorite topics, how to make your brain work smarter, not harder. You know that feeling when you study for hours but nothing sticks? Don't worry, it's not you, it's your strategy. In today's episode, we're breaking down the science of memory, how your brain actually learns, and simple techniques to help you remember more in less time. And joining me today is one of our incredible NSHSS ambassadors, Ishanvi, who's going to share one of her favorite study and memory tips that have personally helped her. Hello everyone, welcome back to today's video. I have here Ishanvi. Ishanvi, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, everyone. My name is Ishanvi. I'm a current senior at Business Bureau High School, and I also attend the veterinary assisting program at Westmeg.
Nice to meet you, and I'm sure everyone else is pleased to meet you as well.
Pleased to meet you too.
So, before we get into techniques, let's talk about how memory actually works. When you learn something new, your brain creates a connection between neurons, like building a bridge of information. The more you use that bridge, the stronger it gets. And that's why rereading notes isn't enough. You have to use what you learned when you quiz yourself, explain it out loud, or teach it to someone else. You're strengthening those neural connections. Now, what's one of the biggest debates among students is how to take notes. Should you write them by hand or type them on computer? Let's hear what Ishanvi has to say about that.
Okay, so handwriting enhances memory, right? Because it forces your brain to process and reframe information. You write slower, so you summarize and synthesize rather than just transcribing on a computer. Studies show that students who handwrite notes develop stronger conceptual understanding and retain information a lot better, even if they write less. Typing can lead to verbatim note taking, which is faster but less mentally engaging. It's great for speed, but not for deep learning. Also, computers often are a distraction because there's so many different tabs on the computer, there's games on the computer, leading to a less deep understanding of the concept due to the possible distractions that computers often tend to give students.
That is very true. And science actually backs all what she says up. When you handwrite, your brain activates more areas linked to understanding and memory. Typing tends to be faster, but it's more like copying. You're not really thinking about the material. So even though handwriting takes longer, it helps your brain encode the information deeper. Now that we know how note taking affects memory, let's talk about what actually works when you're studying. And Shanvi has some tried and true techniques that had made a huge difference for her. Let's check them out.
All
Okay.
right, Starting off with teaching. Teaching someone else is a form of elaborative rehearsal. You're not just recalling the information, you're organizing and connecting those different thoughts and different facts together. It forces you to simplify complex ideas into simplistic understandings for your friends or your peers to understand. Also, when you're teaching somebody else a different concept, you realize gaps in your own understanding and reinforce memory through repetition. Even pretend teaching, like explaining to an imaginary student, recording yourself on a computer, can really enhance those cognitive benefits. Also, active recalling means testing yourself, not just reading the notes, but pulling answers from memory. In my opinion, when I was very young, I used to put stuffed animals on my bed and act like I'm teaching those. And that really helped me understand concepts a lot better. Back then, simple math was really hard for me. But using a teaching skill such as pretend teaching really helped me understand concepts better because I was able to recall the information. I was able to connect hard ideas into simplistic versions, explaining my peers.
I love that. And what's cool is that every single one of those methods connect directly to how the brain learns. For example, quizzing yourself uses active recall, which strengthens neural pathways. Teaching others activates your retrieval process, forcing your brain to reconstruct the information. Acronyms and visuals use something called dual coding, linking words and images so your brain has more than one way to remember. It's like giving your brain backup files for every piece of information. And beyond those methods, there are tons of creative ways to make studying stick, like using acronyms, explaining concepts out loud, or even being quizzed by a friend. Let's see what other study tricks have helped Ishanvi the most when preparing for test.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. Acronyms are really big, helpful, useful tool for me. In the vet science field, we have so many acronyms, especially for vaccines like FBRCP, DHLPP, and FIV. And using these acronyms made it really easy for me to memorize what the diseases were and what vaccines were used for what animals. Also, I make review notebooks. I have one right here from a vet science class. We take a lot of notes in the vet science class, and remembering all the content is really hard. I have two gigantic binders just full of papers and notes. But when it comes to tests and quizzes, I'm lost. Where should I start studying? Which is why I made this review notebook, which has all the information I need, from diagrams to different acronyms, the definition that you need to know for all the different parts of the dog's body, from skeletal system to the other anatomies.
So, what can you take away from all of this? Here are a few science-backed steps that you can start using today. Number one, engage your brain. Don't just read, write, explain, and quiz yourself. Number two, use multiple senses. Draw, color code, or speak out loud. Variety. Your brain loves variety. Review regularly. Space out your study sessions to beat the forgetting curve. Number four, stay balanced. Sleep, breaks, and hydration are part of the learning process. The key is to make studying active, not passive. So, you know how testing and taking quizzes and exams can be so frustrating? Well, they don't need to be. And Shanvi here is going to tell you guys tricks and hacks on how to make them easier. You have the floor, Shanvi.
Okay, so many students have cumulative exams. There are really big exams with a lot of different content. And the best technique that's always worked out for me is to start preparing ahead of time. I feel like a lot of students try to cram days of studying into one night, which is not a healthy technique at all. Because this exam is always stressing us out, and trying to cram more information makes our mind just all fuzzy, and the information never sticks. So, which is why instead of procrastinating, there's a better plan. For example, if your test is in 3 days, try to start studying on Monday, for example, and take a few topics per day and relearn those topics, practice those topics. That way, and the night before the exam, you're prepared. So let's say Monday you do 5 topics, and Tuesday you do 3 topics, and Wednesday you do some other topics. And by the night before the exam, you're ready. You can do one final review, and then you're ready, which means now there's a lot less stress because you feel prepared, and your test will be a lot better in terms of your scores. And also, never double guess yourself. Every time I do that, I always mess up and get the question right. Be confident and say that you can do this.
Amazing, powerful words there, Shanvi. Now, I have some questions I want to ask you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, what study techniques have worked best for you personally?
For me personally, I use a whiteboard. So whenever I have exams that have a lot of diagrams, a lot of equations, I write the diagrams and draw the diagrams and the equations on my whiteboard multiple times. For example, when I was in AP Chem, there were so many diagrams, like the heating and cooling cycle. And so I used to draw the diagrams again and again on the whiteboard until it would stick in my brain. For bio, there was always diagrams too, like the Krebs cycle, Calvin cycle. And so I used to draw the diagram on the computer, not on the whiteboard, to make sure that the information stuck with me. Another technique that I love is getting quizzed, especially for definitions and for vocab words. When people quiz me, I realize this is my strong point, this is my weak point, which is why I love being quizzed by others and using my whiteboard as my two favorite techniques.
The whiteboard technique.
Yeah.
So, I have another question to ask you. Do you use active recall or spaced repetition? And how do you make those techniques part of your routine?
Okay. So for active recall, I use that sometimes, but also use passive studying on the other times. It just depends on what subject it is and what content I have to learn. For my veterinary science class, I have to do a lot of active recalling because we have pop quizzes all the time, we have practicals all the time. And so for those classes, I always have to active recall. For example, last year we learned this information that can come up any day in this year's classes. And so there's always active recall in my vet science classes. But for my school classes, there's just more, like passive remembering and like kind of studying kind of thing because I know exactly what will be on those exams. And so for me, it just depends on what class it is and what content there is on those
I got
tests.
another question for you. What are some of your go-to ways to make boring or complicated topics easier to remember?
Okay, so things that I do to make boring topics easier is using some online platforms that are available. There's SkimKit, there's Quizlet. All of these different apps make learning so much more fun because you can actually play games while you're studying. For example, GimKit, it offers this platform where you answer 5 questions, then you play a game. So this really helps me like make studying less boring because I'm learning the content, I'm answering the questions, I'm also playing games while doing that.
I also play GimKit and Booklet.
Hmm.
The book sometimes.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know what active recall and spaced repetition is, allow me to explain it. So, one of the most powerful ways to actually remember what you study is through something called active recall. And instead of rereading your notes, you try to pull the information from memory, like quizzing yourself or explaining it out loud. It basically trains your brain to retrieve knowledge instead of just recognizing it. And when you combine that with spaced repetition, where you review material at increasing intervals, like after a day, then a few days, and then a week. You're straightening those memory connections right before they fade. It's one of the best ways to study smarter, not longer.